All right, welcome everyone. Today we are back again with our good friend Kevork of Syriana Analysis, and we wanted to talk to you today, Kevork, because I remember you and I uh, relatively recently did a very good talk on the way Iran responded back in the day to the Israeli attacks on its consulate and what else did they do? Did they also attack in Iran back then or not? I
They
don't know, but
they also removed them from Syria completely. The Israelis
right.
and the Jolani people, they removed them from Syria, the decapitation of the Hezbollah leadership, decimation of Gaza.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah, yeah.
there's so many things that Iran lost in the
So many.
past 1.5, 2 years.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. So many things happened. And you and I did a video, and it's called. People can look it up. It's still a very interesting talk, and it's called "Iran is making a huge mistake." I remember the title, and that was you saying that Iran was with Pezeshkian was actually becoming maybe a bit too naive, too soft in the way they responded to Israel, and we are now in the moment, Kevork, that there is a hot war between Israel and Iran. Well, we hear words about ceasefire today. Um, United States just bombed three nuclear facilities. I mean, people are just talking about it as if this is normal. We're talking about nuclear facilities. I mean, these are one of the worst war crimes that you can do. It's crazy. And um, and my question to you is, considering what we talked about back then, do you think that this is actually what was to be expected? Like, okay, the naivete of Iran is what back then is why this is happening right now. That's number one. And number two, do you think, and that is what do you think they may actually be falling again for a kind of trap, because Israel is actually seems to have real problems defending against Iran's missile attacks, and now with a so-called ceasefire, um, these imperialists, they're gonna regroup, they're gonna rebuild, and they're gonna try again.
Hmm.
So, two big questions, so to speak. Your thoughts, Kevork?
Actually, after we did this conversation, I received a lot of criticism and backlash for it, especially from my Iranian friends who told me like things like, we have our own leadership, we know what we're doing, and like they don't need an advice from someone like me. And I'm not advising here, but what Iran did in the past at least 40 years, there is a big geographical proximity distance between Israel and Iran. And because Israel has an upper hand over the Air Force, which they can carry out attacks inside Iran, Iran resorted into a different strategy, and that is to create, to help create non-state actors around the occupied Palestinian territories, from which it can use this as a leverage and a buffer zone and threat against Israel, so that the battles would be on these territories instead of Israel attacking Iran. And Israel knows that for quite some time, but they needed the opportunity to knock out or degrade or destroy some of these non-state actors. And they went into this business after the October 7 attacks. And they have found this as a perfect excuse as the 9/11 of Israel to attack against these non-state actors. And during this time, the argument was, should Iran intervene? Should Iran wait? What should Iran do, basically? Now, I don't know with the situation of Gaza, Hamas, and Jihad. In my interpretation, Iran was more on the side of Islamic Jihad than on the side of Hamas in this case. Hamas had a rift in the organization between the political bureau and the military wing. The political bureau was more on the side of Qatar and Turkey, and then you have the military wing more on the side of Iran, but then they're shy to support Syria because of what happened in the country, because of the sectarian sensitivities basically in the region. But the main test for Iran was in Lebanon. Hezbollah was the most loyal non-state actor in the orbit of Iran. And I say this as an ally, because Hezbollah was an ally and not a proxy for Iran. However, during the war, the hot war between Hezbollah and Israel, when Israel invaded Lebanon and waged an incursion inside Lebanon, Hezbollah had an enormous amount of missiles that they didn't use, and the ones that they used were the smaller warheads. Like when they used to fire on Tel Aviv, they didn't cause major damage to the buildings, and they didn't hit vital interests of Israel, despite the fact that they had the capability, because Iran asked them not to do so. Iran didn't want to go all the way to an open-end, let's say, conflict with Israel. And that led into negotiations. And when Hezbollah realized that their major ally and the big brother in this case, it doesn't have an interest in intervention in this case, so they started talking to through mediators to agree on a ceasefire talk. And here the Israelis gave this false impression to Hezbollah that they will accept a ceasefire agreement. And while they were talking about a ceasefire agreement, they have killed the entire leadership of Hezbollah, including Nasrallah. And after the assassination, the foreign minister of Lebanon said that he was in contact with Hezbollah and he was mediating between Hezbollah and France and other powers, and that Nasrallah accepted a ceasefire agreement in principle if there is also ceasefire agreement in Gaza. So they again use negotiations as a smokescreen in order to knock out the leadership of Hezbollah. Now that the leadership of Hezbollah is gone, I hate to say that I agree with Netanyahu that some people are irreplaceable. Someone like Nasrallah is irreplaceable. And the guy after him, Safieddin, was also assassinated in a matter of few days because he had the potential, the experience, and the character to lead Hezbollah like Nasrallah did, or like similar to Nasrallah. That's why they killed him. So they left Hezbollah in the hands of the current Secretary General. Sometimes I forget names, but I will remember his name now. And this guy, in my opinion, is incapable of holding Hezbollah on his shoulders. And I talk to people in Lebanon who support Hezbollah, and they tell me things like, this guy cannot fill the shoes of Nasrallah. So in this situation, when you lose these few steps inside Lebanon, they have seen this as a green light to come after another ally in the region, and that is Syria, because Syria was the most vulnerable among all these players. One quarter or Assad controls two-thirds of the country. Back then, the military was overstretched, and with the economic exhaustion and the economy is in tatters, they were capable to restart this regime change operation with collaboration with Turkey, of course, and they knocked out Assad, which means this 40 years strategy to support state and non-state actors around Israel to create this certain buffer zone between you and Israel is gone. And once it is gone, then the war will be inside Iran. This is what we argued last time, and it happened. Now, Operation Rising Lion, the goal was this shock factor that they did in the first few days by eliminating and assassinating many senior officers, commanders, leadership, IRGC, Navy, scientists, etc., was to cripple the Iranian leadership to the extent that the people would feel emboldened, those who are against the current system in Iran, to go to the streets and start a color revolution or start what they call popular revolution against them. Israel and the United States knew that they cannot do regime change through airstrikes. That's impossible for them. It's a country of 92 million people. It's a big territory, a huge military, big missile capabilities. So turning the people against the leadership was the plan, because what is the Operation Rising Lion? You remember the former flag of Iran. They had this lion on it under the Shah. So the goal was to bring the Shah back. or this so-called crown prince, he probably is a coke addict in the United States, and he's screwing his brother's wife, which is.
But that is what I always say, Kevork. I always say, if you're a sexually depraved monster, you will always be part of the imperial club. All these guys supported by the West are depraved, sexually immoral, depraved, torturous monsters. So he will fit. He will be part of the club.
He will fit. He will fit. And he's by the way, never worked in his life. Like, he doesn't know what the work means. He never led in his life, let's say, even his wife, because his wife was also with the yoga teacher in the past, which means this guy, he couldn't even lead his family. He screwed his brother's wife, and then his brother, I heard he committed suicide. This guy is completely deranged, and I don't think that he is fit for the Iranian people, and that is the point. The point is not to bring someone competent in Iran. The point is to bring someone incompetent in Iran, because they want to divide the Iranian society again based on ethnic and religious lines. Now, Iran is a big country and a very important civilization. Now, Syria as a state was a new concept. It was something in the Westphalian world. It was new after the independence of Syria in 45, 46, from the French independence. All of a sudden, they sliced the region. They said, this is Syria. Yes, there were lots of civilization passing through Syria, but there was no Syrian empire in the past. Those were different civilizations and empires passing through Syria. But Iran was an empire in the past, and the people are deep-rooted into that region, including with this collective consciousness about what it means to be an Iranian, right? So in order to hit this civilization, you need someone like Reza Pahlavi, who is so incompetent that he will disintegrate the Iranian society and the Iranian civilization, just like they did with all these artifacts and antiques in Syria, destruction of the Palmyra, destruction of Christian towns in Ma'lula, etc. Those are all go in line with the general guidelines of the current empire, and that is destroy the identities, destroy the civilizations, because once you destroy identities and civilizations, then the people will no longer feel belonging to that land, which means they will no longer fight for their country. And this was the plan, like this shock, bring a new regime. I think this has failed miserably from the American and the Israeli side. Now, from the Iranian side, the strategy was the following. They wanted to exclusively harm Israel through missile attacks. And that is successful to some extent if the human toll is high enough in Israel, which can turn into psychological pressure, psychological operation against the Netanyahu regime, because the people in Israel are not going to pay a huge price for what? Why are we going to war against Iran? Iran didn't attack Israel. Israel attacked Iran. And even if the opposite was true, but the Israeli people are not used to this type of attacks in the middle of Tel Aviv. And the economy is becoming all of a sudden frozen. The airports are closed. So Israel cannot sustain a few weeks more of similar attacks from Iran. However, now that they accepted this ceasefire, this could be as a trap, as you mentioned at the beginning. Like, this could be as the best trap ever. And they have done it with Gaza, they have done it with Lebanon, they have done it with Syria. They have given them all the false impressions that they want to just cool down the war and that they will accept the status quo. But the last moment, they changed the status quo. And I believe that this time can also be a similar case, that the Iranians would have this false feeling that everything is fine, security is coming back, and then all of a sudden they could kill Khamenei. And remember, before Raisi was killed or had an accident, he would have become a successful successor for Khamenei. He was politically very mature, ideologically and religiously very much competent about what Iran needs, basically. And I think they killed him. I think they killed him because he would have become a good successor. Now, who is the successor of Khamenei? Nobody knows. Nobody knows, and we don't know if there are people getting ready to come to power after that, because the alternative for Raisi and Abdullahian, in my opinion, was disastrous. This current administration in Iran by Pezeshkian and his Jawad Zarif team, I think they have harmed Iran enough in the past few months already, with the economy, the currency devalued 50% under Pezeshkian, which means the people are paying a huge price in the country. And with their, you called it a naivete. I also believe it's a naive, but they are also, when you, like, I mean, this is very simple. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But when it happens multiple times, it goes beyond naivete, in my opinion. It becomes more like a complicity with the Israeli side in this case. And I think that the Israelis are
criminal neglect is what you can almost say. Criminal neglect.
Indeed, indeed. And I think the Israelis will, they didn't win this war against Iran. They have inflicted damage to Iran, and Iran also inflicted damage to Israel. But is there anyone with, sorry for the word, two functioning brain cells who believe that Netanyahu will not try again against Iran? Do you think that they will just let Iran now thrive again? Do you think that they will allow Iran to continue with its nuclear program? They will not. They will try again and again and again. This is a period where you said they will restock their weapons, they will prepare themselves, they will find different strategies. Now that they hit Iran in multiple locations, they know the mapping of their air defenses, they know the major military installations. They will come back sooner or later against Iran. And I'm sure the Iranian IRGC, the Quds Force, etc., they know all about this. But it also, they give you the impression that their hands are tied by this government in Iran. But this attack against Iran will also change the public opinion now against the so-called progressive government in Iran, because the people in Iran will ask the question, how can we trust the United States and Israel? Like, we were negotiating with the Americans when Israel attacked us. So what's the point of talking to them, and what's the point of trusting them? So this could also be the end, by the way, for the Pezeshkian government this time. Let's see in the next 2 days. We're talking now on the first day of the alleged ceasefire agreement, but the next 2 days will be detrimental. Will the ceasefire agreement last? That's the question.
Yeah, actually, a question about the ceasefire itself. I've been seeing a lot of contradictory bits of news in this fog of war. So you had Trump announcing this supposed ceasefire where Iran was supposed to cease firing, and then Israel was going to be allowed to continue firing for another 12 hours. But then after the time that Iran was supposedly, according to this unilateral statement about a ceasefire, supposed to stop firing, I saw reports of additional missiles fired from Iran into Israel. So as of now, what is both of your best information about, the state of this? I don't even know if we should call it a ceasefire, but have you gotten more recent news that confirms this?
Just before I answer, Peter, if you go to your settings, audio, there is an echo cancellation. If you click on it, so I can hear my voice again. If it's not enabled, you can enable it. Do we really know that these missiles really reached Israel from Iran? Like, is this an information that is confirmed? Because the Iranian side says they want to abide by this ceasefire agreement at the current moment. And this is the first time I see a ceasefire agreement which has two different timelines. One country has 12 hours extra to bomb another country. It never happened. And has the Iranian side officially accepted the ceasefire agreement? Like, did they come and say, we accept it? I don't see official statements from Iran saying, yes, we agreed, we approved, because it is Trump who came and declared the ceasefire agreement on his social media account. But until this moment, who accepted this? Because if Iran accepted the ceasefire agreement, that's even worse, in my opinion, for Iran, because this comes in the context of US attacking 3 locations inside Iran, saying they have hit the nuclear facilities, and then the Iranians give the Americans prior notice that they will hit Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, so that they have emptied the base. And then after hitting probably one missile, which reached the air base out of probably 13 or something, all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, Trump declares a ceasefire agreement. It gives the impression that there was already behind the scene talks between Iran and the United States that they will de-escalate, and that the Americans told the Iranians in prior that they will hit Iran, but they will not damage the nuclear. It would have been disastrous if they were able to destroy these nuclear sites, right? But they couldn't. And then the Iranians retaliate in a more than calculated manner because they don't want the Americans to intervene against them. So what does this tell us? This tells us that both sides were in coordination for a ceasefire agreement, and now here comes the conspiracy theory, and that is that Israel wanted to expand the scope of the war against Iran. And so I can hear myself again. Every time I think you turn on the microphone, I can hear myself. Maybe you have to wear headphones or something. I don't know. I think in this case, the conspiracy theory would be that Israel wanted to expand the scope of the war against Iran. The United States didn't want to do that. And they have agreed with the Iranians that US would strike Iran. They would call it a victory. And the Iranians would retaliate against them in a very calculated manner. And Trump would come and say, "Khalas, everything is done. We're finished. We won this war. If this is the victory, if this is what they want to call as a victory, then now the Israelis will not have the opportunity to continue this operation against Iran for the time being." But Netanyahu definitely is planning for either false flag operation or another provocation or even attacks inside Israel to blame Iran for it to continue this. I don't believe for a second that Netanyahu will stop here. I don't believe for a second that Netanyahu will abide by this ceasefire agreement.
Yeah, I think that's quite reasonable. The major issue here, though, that kind of makes all of our thinking about this somewhat beside the point is that nobody knows the most important bit of information here, which is what are the stockpiles of missiles that the Iranians have? What's the extent of damage to their military capabilities? That's in fog of war. We're never going to know that until much later. But that's really the key factor here. If they're out of missiles, or they're saving missiles in case that the U.S. intervenes to a greater extent, so that they can blow up all of the oil infrastructure in the Gulf states, then it makes a lot of sense for them to try to accept any sort of ceasefire offer, even if they have very little trust that it'll be respected in the long term. But the core factor is something that we just don't know.
Yes. Actually, there is something very important, and that is the Iranian missile attacks against Israel accelerated from the ballistic missiles into hypersonic missiles. And it seems that Israel doesn't have the technological means to intercept this type of missiles. Like the number of missiles fell on Israel was extraordinary. So in this case, definitely the Iranians are capable of hitting inside Israel. But the question is, what's the military value of the destruction that they have inflicted on Israel? Israel is also hiding its casualties and how much damage they have received, just like in Iran. Now, the Iranians, for sure, they're not suicidal to bomb all the fuel and the oil refineries in the region and turn the entire Gulf states against them, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain. I mean, we can have a negative sentiments toward these regimes in the Persian Gulf countries, but if these countries turn against Iran completely, they could allow all their airspaces for the US forces to bomb Iran. They could participate as part of a so-called GCC forces to invade Iran. They could be boots on the ground. There could be several things. So imagine one missile fell on Al Udeid Air Base and the entire GCC countries have condemned the Islamic, League condemned, the Arab League condemned, Jolani condemned, everybody condemned Iran. And in this case, it's a bad PR also for Iran to turn these countries against them militarily, economically, and in so many cases, especially Qatar, because Qatar played some role in relieving the sanctions against Iran. So Iran, I don't think they have an embedded interest in turning these countries against them, but they have a big interest in turning the public opinion against Israel. That's their interest. So the bombing of Qatar yesterday was a bad PR move for Qatar, for Iran, because first they didn't achieve military goals, and second they turned all these countries against them. That imagine when Israel attacked Iran, the Saudis came with a strong statement condemning Israel. Now they turn the Saudis again against them. So I think Iran shouldn't really turn these countries again. They have to be picky in this, choose their battlefields more wisely. They should focus on Israel and not on the United States and not on the Gulf countries. They should really sometimes be more quiet when it comes to, because some people have big mouths in Iran. We will wipe out the entire Gulf countries. We will do this and that, but that's not in their interest. That's not in their interest. So what would be the best strategy in this case? Everybody knows that Israel is committing the most heinous act we have seen since how long? Since World War II, right? This type of atrocity with broad daylight. Nobody is sympathizing with Israel except for hardcore Zionists and the people who are on the payroll of Israel, right? Nobody else is sympathizing with the Israelis. And if Iran bombs Israel day and night for the next weeks, nobody will come and turn against Iran. Like Saudis didn't turn against them. Qataris didn't turn against. Nobody turned against them when they were bombing Israel. Although these countries are, some of them under the table, some of them on the table, over the table allies with or cooperating with Israel. So the attack, I don't think it was a good idea on Qatar, especially that you didn't really achieve any military objective. What's the goal of just bombing if it's for optics, if you don't want to reach any goal, and then turn these countries against you? It was a bad call, in my opinion.
Well, that could be the goal in itself. You know, you've got a domestic constituency as well, and if your population sees you take a bombing campaign from the U.S. and do nothing in response, I'm just throwing that out there as that could be a potential rationale.
Yeah, but the Americans bombed the country. They bombed nuclear sites, and the way they have bombed Qatar, it was quite obvious because 3 hours ago, prior to the attack, all these countries, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, they have blocked their skies. They have closed their airports because everybody knew that the attack is coming. So this was a coordinated attack, basically a theater to save face, right? Without any military objective. What's the military objective? Because Al Udeid Air Base is the most important imperialist air base in the entire region in West Asia. This is the air base where the CENTCOM has used as an advanced operation room against Iraq in 2003. This is the place where they coordinate most of their aerial activities in the region is in Qatar. So it has an important value, right? But if you bomb the runway of the airbase, which 30 minutes later they can make it operational again, then that means you're not interested in retaliation, but you're interested in saving face, as you mentioned, in front of the people. But that's a bad PR because Iranians are not fools. Today, when you read on X, the people who support Khamenei, people who support the IRGC, people who support the attacks against Israel and the United States en masse, they're criticizing their government for first accepting this ceasefire deal and second for this theatrical attack against. So this is the thing about Iran, by the way. There is this fake narrative that they have created that the Iranian people are under, they're subjugated by what they call a regime in Tehran. There is no freedom of expression. There is no, you cannot really tell your mind. But then when I read for the Iranians, especially under the posts of their officials, under the posts of Pezeshkian, under the posts of the foreign minister, it's Arakci. the number of Iranians you see who live in Iran and they're criticizing their government is huge, including one of my very good friends, Ihsan Safernejad. I had him on my show on Syriana Analysis before this attack started against Iran. And he was so critical of his government after the show. I asked him, like, will you be okay in Iran criticizing your government this much? He said, yeah, it's normal. Everybody criticizes the government here. But he's
probably Iran is more democratic than the United States.
Or Germany.
Yeah, or Germany. Yeah, exactly. So, Kevork, I was wondering, we will stay in that realm a bit. We have that really, it seems we have that really, or at least Iran has to play that balance of, on the one hand, deterrence, and on the other hand, you can just feel that Iran tries everything to avoid a conflict with the United States and Israel, which of course totally makes sense. The problem is you're dealing with such a ruthless enemy that just doesn't listen to anything that shows them weakness. We've seen it over and over and over again. So it's for us as outsiders, of course, it's very easy to say like, oh, and they should do this and that. But don't forget, Iran is in the middle of the attention of the empire. So I totally get that often they choose the side of cautiousness than to go all in. However, it is a difficult dilemma. My question to you is, so you had first that Israel decapitated Hezbollah, of course. Israel destroyed Syria with its allies. And now they also started decapitating Iran. I mean, ruthless decapitation attacks, inside with the Mossad, killing very important scientists and politicians and military officials, and very, very brutal. And my question is, how do you feel about Iran's True Promise 3 reaction? So for a lot of people, like you said, Kevork, the attack on Israel seems to be cathartic. Lots of people around the world really enjoy seeing that Israel gets a bloody nose. On the other hand, it's still highly asymmetrical if you compare it to the damage that the Israelis inflict on Iran. So how do you feel about True Promise 3? That's number one. And number two is, how come nobody has thought of decapitation attacks on Israel? I mean, all these crazy guys are just walking around like everything is fine and saying all these genocidal language. But it seems so strange to me that the other side almost always gets away unscathed. How do you see that?
So Iranian Islamic Revolution, one of the pillars was championing the Palestinian cause. So what this conflict is about is, the major issue is Palestine, between Israel and Iran. Of course, Iran has its own regional aspirations in the region, and this is in parallel happening. That's why many Arab countries say, oh, they're using the Palestine cause to gain momentum or leverage in the region. Then why don't you support Palestine? So that you pull the rug under the feet of the Iranians, if that is the case. Now, when you see the region, that especially after October 7, what's the point for Iran to open an all-out war against Israel if no other ally or any other player in the region would be on the side of Iran? So we're talking about, from the Palestinian perspective, 22 treasonous Arab countries or leaders, right? Like what is the case of Palestine? Is it an Islamic case? Is it an Arabic case? Is it a case for land? What is it about, right? If it's about the Arabic case, then the Arabic countries, they don't show any interest in Palestine. In the contrary, they're normalizing ties with Israel, right? On the expense of the Palestinians. And they don't mind. Their objection is about the optics, the way they're killing Palestinians, the way they want to ethnically cleanse them, like in a barbaric way, in open airfields, killing them while they are collecting food. This is the optics that they object. But at the end of the day, is there any Arab country who really believe in a Palestinian state? Because they're not working towards it, right? So if
Algeria, I think Algeria is one of the few countries.
Yes, but what's the leverage of Algeria over the discourse of this conflict? Tunisia is the same. Syria before that was the same. Now the region is completely changing towards normalizing the normalization with Israel, right? Like everybody is on the American camp in this case, and they see that this shift from unipolarity to multipolarity is not going to be a fast process. Therefore, they keep their eggs in the basket of the United States until things change in the region. And in the context of this struggle of power in the region, Iran stands alone. They don't have any country in the region supporting Iran's actions against the Israelis in this case. So why would, from the Iranian perspective, they would destroy their country, kill their own people, probably regime change, probably disintegration of their country, probably bloodshed, probably civil war, ME keys, Azerbaijan eyeing on the north of Iran. Why would they lose their country if there is no interest in the liberation of Palestine to begin with in the region? This is what many Iranians also say. We are on the side of Palestine and we will strike Israel, and we are doing it, but we're not suicidal to lose our country on the expense of others if the others are not here to support their Palestinian brothers and sisters. So if Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, all these countries, UAE, they turn their back on Palestine, I don't think it's only Iran's responsibility in this case to come in support of the Palestinians, and especially in a region where nowadays Iran is seen as a Shia sectarian power because of the indoctrination that they have done to the people of the region for a very long time, that if Iran wins in Palestine, then the entire Arab world will convert to Shiism and they will lose their, religious, let's say, identity, being a Sunni, or like lots of people believe this, right? And in Syria, for example, when Iran intervened, there was so much talk about spreading Shiism in the country. Like when Aleppo was liberated in 2016, they said it fell in the hands of the Shias. And this is what they convinced the people. This is how they indoctrinated them. This is how mobilized them. This is how they given them arms to fight back against Assad government and Hezbollah and Iran-linked groups in the country, and they defeated them because they have filled them with hatred against the Shias in the region. That's the reality that we have to accept. Like, I'm still reading for, sorry to say, Palestinians from Gaza. They don't live in Gaza at the current moment. They live in Qatar, of course, with huge accounts, 500,000 followers, etc. Day and night, they're calling Iran an empire. They're calling Iran like they are Shia crusaders in the region, because this is what the Qataris and the Saudis have indoctrinated them for a very long time. And this was the job that Zionists wanted to do, but they cannot do it through their Israeli channels. So they have channels in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Yeah, Al Jazeera. Like I watched on Al Jazeera, by the way, videos of their very senior clerics based in Qatar, basically giving fatwa to fight alongside NATO in Libya against Gaddafi and kill Gaddafi. This is what this was the fatwa, like Sheikh al-Qaradawi, right? And then you have Sheikh al-Muhaysini and Arefi, Sheikh al-Ar'ur. Those are all based in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. They have shows, and their outlets are up on the satellite, on the internet. They're not taken down by any power because they're very beneficial in brainwashing the people by hatred. So our region also needs a reform, basically intellectual reform, for the people to notice that the geopolitical conflict in the region is not about a race, it's not about your religion. If the people of the region were all Hindus now, and they said no to the American dominance on the region, do you think that the Americans would have come and said, oh no, those people are Hindus, we want to spare them from our bombs? You know, that was not going to happen. Whether you're Shia or Sunni or Christian, you are just part of the region, and you have a massive wealth, natural resources in the country, very important geopolitical position, and you have Israel in the middle of this, right? So you're very, very important regardless of your identity and your background. And the people are so distracted by these culture wars and religious wars that we have a regime now in Damascus, for example. They are openly saying that we are a Sunni state, we are an Umayyad state, and we will fight against these infidels and kafirs, and first we will come and purify our own Islamic home by the Islamic minorities, and then we will come after the rest, which are the Christians and the Jewish people, etc., because their entire worldview is based on this sectarian hatred of the world. But they are the useful geopolitical idiots of the empire wreaking havoc in the region.
And opportunists, of course, Kevork, because they won't do that to Israel or the United States. They're hypocrite opportunists.
Yeah. Actually, I just want to mention that this 2 days ago, basically, there were 2 suicide bombers going into a church in Syria and blowing themselves up among 30 Syrian Christians, Orthodox Christians, and they have killed them. So this type of things will accelerate more in the region until they are one-colored states. And this is the real danger against Israel. When you have a country like Syria, like Lebanon, with multicultural and multi-ethnic and multi-religious society coexisting together with one centralized strong government, that gives the signal to the rest of the people that coexistence between Jewish people and Muslim people is also possible. Then why would Israel create an ethno-religious state for itself, just for the Jewish people? If coexistence is possible in the countries surrounding Israel, then this is a bad optics for Israel. And that's why Israel always wanted one-colored countries around it. If its neighbor is a Sunni country exclusively, and another country is exclusively Druze, and another country is exclusively Shia, then what is the problem for Israel to be country only for the Jewish people, Jewish and Zionist people, because this is also something that we have to be careful. So everything that is happening in the region is definitely distracting the people from the core of the issue, from being awake for all these complications and the plots being cooked against them, and they're falling with their own feet to the trap, partly because of the propaganda and partly because people usually do not notice patterns. Like, imagine this happened only 100 years ago when the Brits came to the Arabs and said, hey, bro, let's rise against the Ottoman Empire. We kick their ass, and then you get your nation. We give you will become one king and one nation. And once they rose against the Ottoman Empire, what did the imperialists do to them? Sorry to say, they give them the middle finger. They didn't get anything from it. In the contrary, they have divided the region. So every time and then, this cycle of history is running around, and we are falling into it over and over again. And this is a new Sykes-Picot happening in the region. And what Iran is doing, basically, they know the stakes. So they're preserving their sovereignty, they're preserving their country, and they're being careful that they won't be also part of this balkanization of the region to the extent that their country would be disintegrated. So if I'm a decision maker in Iran, what is my priority? My priority is my people, right? I have to keep my people safe. I have to keep my country intact, the sovereignty, the territorial integrity of my country. If I go into bigger adventure, then this could also reflect negatively on me. That also explains why Iran is always acting in a calculated manner against its enemies in the region.
Yeah. And Kevork, and I keep repeating that, and Peter has heard me say that often, and I think Peter agrees with me, is that we of course have a major structural problem. What we can see again is that we now have problems in Ukraine, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Iran, Israel, or occupied Palestine, and what it shows is that a country of 300 million people or 350 million people, the United States, just has endless streams of money to fund death machines all over the world continuously. It's insane how it's a huge country, of course, but in the grand scheme of things, a country of 300 million people being able to fund so much death and destruction endlessly is really, really insane. And it brings me to that structural problem we have, the bloody dollar as the reserve currency. And I saw a very good interview recently with I think it was a Palestinian man. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name. And that person said something very good. That person said, the United States has the dollar hegemony. And he said, the first lines of defense of the dollar are the Gulf kingdoms. So the Gulf kingdoms are the reason why the US is such a powerful tool for imperialism. So if you want to beat imperialism, if you want to beat the dollar, you have to push the first domino blocks. These are the Gulf kingdoms, especially Saudi Arabia, for example. My question is, why is there hardly, and maybe I am just not seeing it, I'm not too well versed in that region. You are, Kevork. Why don't I see hardly any resistance against these major foundations of imperialism? That's the Gulf kingdoms. So you see all that fighting against foot soldiers on the ground, fighting against terrorists in Syria and fighting. But I'm like, what's going on with these major foundations? These Gulf kingdoms. Where's the resistance? I just don't get it.
Karim, I will give you a few examples of what happened after 2011 in Syria and how the Gulf countries played the instrumental role. Because the United States didn't spend much of the money in Syria. They have spent around $1 billion per year. It's a huge money. So they spend around $7 billion in like 7-8 years to fund and arm these terrorist groups in the country. But the biggest share was by Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. So they have spent, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars in Syria, right? To do what exactly? To do regime change in the country. For the benefit of who? For the benefit of the United States and Israel. So when they were tasked to spend the money on a war machine, they have done it like good boys they are. But when the time comes for Palestine, for example, you see what they do. All of a sudden, they all want a diplomatic solution, and they criticize any, let's say, armed struggle against the Israelis. They call all the non-state actors fighting against Israel either proxies, pawns for Iran, or terrorists, etc., etc. This is the same literature of Israel and the United States. So I will give you an example. Bandar bin Sultan, when he was the ambassador of Saudi Arabia in Washington, D.C., because of his very close relationship with the Bush family, he was called Bandar Bush. And during 9/11, when the attacks happened against the United States, he was the ambassador of Saudi Arabia in Washington, D.C. And Saudi Arabia played a role in recruiting some of these Al-Qaeda operatives to carry out these attacks on 9/11. Which means these attacks, which led into massive wars by the United States in the region, in Afghanistan, Syria, domino effects in other places, like in Lebanon in 2006 and in Syria in 2011, was also partly due Saudi participation in this. And in Bandar bin Sultan retired, potentially, allegedly, but he rose again into the scene in 2012, in 2013, when he became again the head of the Saudi intelligence. Now, in 2011, when the Americans wanted to topple Syria, they have given this task to Qatar. And Qatar formed the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria by Jolani, and they have funneled the money, the training, in coordination with other countries. But when Bandar bin Sultan came in 2013 to power, he asked the Arabic and Gulf countries to allocate $2 trillion to the Syrian war. $2 trillion to the Syrian war. And this was a meeting happened between foreign intelligence, heads of the foreign intelligence in the region and abroad in Saudi Arabia in 2013. And this was revealed by Hamad bin Jassim, the former foreign minister of Qatar and the Qatari national TV, saying that Hamad bin Bandar bin Sultan asked for $2 trillion. I can't even know how many zeros there are in the $2 trillion. If I want to write it on my laptop, probably I don't have the computer capability to do that. They couldn't allocate that much of money because like this is a crazy amount of money, but they have allocated over $200 billion for the war effort in Syria. So this is what Saudi Arabia is about. And in 2013, what organization has been formed all of a sudden in Syria and Iraq? ISIS. Where did ISIS come from? If you see the sequence of events, it came right after Bandar came to power. And right after he came as the head of the intelligence, ISIS came as an independent organization in Syria, created an Islamic state, carried out all these heinous attacks against the Syrian people, and then they moved to Lebanon, started sending car bombs, where against Hezbollah. It's like all these things, when you put it into perspective, you see that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, all these countries, they are below allies. They're not even allies to the United States. The United States doesn't see them as allies. They see them as instruments for its, yeah. And when you task Saudi Arabia to spend all this money, and they do, and then the Saudis come reinvest a lot of money in the United States with like $800 billion, UAE $1 trillion. The rest are, I don't know, half a billion dollar or $500 billion, excuse me. This is you mentioned United States as an empire, but and the petrodollar is as one of its foundations. They're doing more than that for the US. They're not only giving it this privilege of buying and selling oil with the dollar, they're also acting as foot soldiers for the United States in the region against the enemies of the United States. And then they're also they're using the same Zionist strategy. And this is the mind-blowing thing, which I believe, this is my theory, that when they noticed between 2011 and 2017 that this regime change war couldn't oust Assad from power, what they did basically, Trump came and said, I want to stop this Operation Timber Sycamore. It's too costly. It is going to terrorist organizations, blah, blah, blah. So he stopped it. But he imposed draconian sanctions to devastate the Syrian economy, and he did. Now, the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Bahrainis and the rest, in 2018, at the same time, Trump stopped the regime change war on Syria and imposed the sanctions, they came and started whispering in the ears of Bashar, telling him that they can save his economy if he changes course. If he changes course and reorient its geopolitical posture in the region, then the Saudis and the Emiratis will invest in the country and convince the Americans to lift the sanctions. So they again acted as a foot soldier for the United States, because what's the end goal? Like, they don't hate Assad because his name is Assad, because they don't like his foreign policy. So if Assad changes his foreign policy after enormous military war and then economic devastation, they would have already achieved the regime change war. But what they did basically, just like what the Israelis do, they talk to you, they give you the false impression that you're safe and the regime change war is over. So they give you this false feeling that you're no longer targeted by the empire. This is what they did with Assad. For 5 years, between 2018 and 2023, receiving him in the Arab League and giving him the red carpet treatment in the UAE and Saudi Arabia was all part of the plan, to give him the impression that he doesn't have to prepare for any war. There is no attack. Everything is now moving in the political direction. Compromise will happen sooner or later. They told him, there were so many deals that Syria wanted to do, and they told him not to do until Trump comes to power, because once Trump comes, they're friends with Trump and Trump will lift the sanctions. And what they did, basically, they knocked him out during the transitional period. When Biden lost the elections and Trump was still going to come to power, this was the time when they knocked him out. And this was the plan between Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Israel, the United States, and also probably Russia. And we don't know yet why Russia participated in this. And the inaction of the Russian Air Force was an indication that they didn't want to help Syria. There were so many cases that Jolani forces, they were like on a motorcycle from Aleppo to Damascus. It's like 500 kilometers. You could hunt them like rabbits if there was an air force.
Yeah,
in the
like I said before the show, also to you, Vanessa Billy, who we talked to a while back, also said that Russia was bombing empty ground. And
Yeah,
they all
they
came out
bombed. They
okay.
bombed empty grounds. They did bomb also empty bridges. They claimed that they bombed Al Rastan bridge so that the militants do not move to Damascus. But when I saw the video, there was a minimum damage to the bridge. And the question is, where was the Syrian Air Force? Because Syria has its own Air Force. They have its own MiGs. They have its own Sukhois. So why the Syrian army also didn't operate, which means also indicates that there was a coup inside the military. And Assad lost his control over the army. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense from any logical perspective that Assad didn't order. Do you think Assad would not have used the Air Force? They would have. But it's quite clear that there was a coup inside the military and the leadership level. There were people who were collaborating with these outside powers, and they have given orders for the soldiers to give up their weapons and not to strike against the Jolani forces. Jolani actually didn't win the war. He walked from Aleppo to Damascus. He walked without any resistance, without any fighting. So this was all like a political compromise with the participation of many powers, and Iran lost a big foothold in Syria as a let's say front line against Israel.
Yeah, and Jolani is just one of the Jolani just fits the club. I mean, let's be honest. It's when you tell me about this stuff and all the things that we learn about imperialism. Also, sometimes when I listen to Aaron Good, for example, who also says that it's just it's peak criminality, man. U.S. empire. It's a peak criminality. We always think about the mafia, it's so these are like organized crime, and these are errand boys compared to imperialists. It's like mafia on steroids. It's so, and when you have that Al Jolani, he fits, man. He fits the gang of Netanyahu, MBS, Al-Sisi, all these figures, man. It's one big club of depraved monsters, and they keep each other in power. And of course, United States wants a guy like that in power, because these people do everything to maintain their position, to maintain their lavish, depraved lifestyle. You're just telling about the whole interference of, for example, Saudi Arabia and Syria and that kind of stuff, and beyond just trading in the dollar. Yeah, of course, these guys don't want to lose that intense, lavish, depraved lifestyle that they have. So they work with empire, whatever necessary. Their life, they for them, their position, their life of being able to do whatever they want, all the sick, depraved things that they want to do, is by being slaves to empire. Then they can stay in power, and it doesn't matter to them that Arabs are being genocided and that the countries around them, everybody's being killed, tortured, raped. It doesn't matter to them as long as they maintain their power, as long as they maintain their position. And that's the kind of people the U.S. also wants in power, because people who are not blackmailable, people you cannot blackmail. Let's say, even in the West, if you have politicians like that, let's say Jeremy Corbyn or something, or you have, or now in Burkina Faso, the Ibrahim Traore, they want to get rid of you. They don't want moral people. They don't want genuine people, because these people are a threat to empire. You want depraved guys like Netanyahu. You want depraved guys like Al Jolani. You know what I mean?
And Reza Pahlavi. But there is a deep layer to this. If we accept the fact that Jolani is a foot soldier for the empire, and he was a foot soldier for the empire, then this raises a lot of questions. Who is Jolani? Jolani vowed allegiance to Ayman al-Zawahiri in Iraq. He fought with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in Iraq. He started or participated in starting a civil war in 2004, 5, 6, when at the height of the sectarian tensions between the Shias and the Sunnis there, and he sent car bombs into the Shia neighborhoods, trying to cause this civil war, right, in Iraq. And then when he ended up in the Buqa camp, right, in the Buqa camp was alongside Abu Bakr Baghdadi, and coincidentally, both of them were released in March 2011, just at the same month that the Syrian war started, and both of them went to Syria. Those are not coincidences. And if these are not coincidences, then this also, we have to go back a little bit in history, then the entire Al-Qaeda, let's say, the founding of Al-Qaeda and how it has become this vicious boogeyman, all started in Afghanistan. Then who gave them the weapons? Who gave them the ideological support? Saudi Arabia and the United States. So can it be also that Al-Qaeda was so penetrated by this foreign intelligence that they have orchestrated 9/11 attacks against the United States by Al-Qaeda operatives in order to start these endless wars in the region? So if that is the case, that means the Saudi role goes beyond what we spoke about this. It goes like they were essential part in unleashing this death and destruction on the region because of the 9/11 attacks, which led all this changing the maps in the region, right? So the Saudi role is really, it's so deep with the Americans. It is underestimated by many people. They have enormous money and enormous, let's say, vile political aspirations in the region and abroad, which, according to many WikiLeaks documents, which I read personally, they have built hundreds of schools in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Central Asia, Middle East, to radicalize the youth. Why? What's the purpose of radicalizing the youth except turning them into geopolitical idiots, foot soldiers in the hands of the empire? When was the last time Al-Qaeda attacked Israel? There is none, right? There is none. There is none. There is none. The former head of Mossad was on Al Jazeera with Mehdi Hassan a few years ago. This was in 2017, I believe 17 or 16. And this was one of the few times that Mehdi Hassan did a great journalism. And he was asking him, why are you guys receiving Al-Qaeda fighters and giving them medical treatment in the occupied Golan Heights field hospitals? Like, aren't you afraid of a blowback? He said, no, we're not afraid of a blowback. He says, according to my memory, Al-Qaeda has never attacked Israel before, so we act in a humane way with Al-Qaeda operatives or Al-Qaeda militants. And then he asked him, so what about, if it's about humanitarian efforts, then what about Hezbollah fighters? Do you also receive Hezbollah fighters in your hospital? He said, no. Hezbollah has carried out attacks against Israel, and we will never receive them as... So now you see the Al-Qaeda has become in power in Damascus, and they have endorsed him and normalized him. But Hezbollah is considered a terrorist organization. They have removed the 10 million bounty over the head of Jolani. He was the founder of the Al-Qaeda. So which one is the terrorist here, in your opinion?
and at the same time, Netanyahu uses it for Western audiences as a nice propaganda prop. He will say, Palestinians are like ISIS. The resistance is like ISIS. They're ISIS. They're ISIS. It's so hypocrite, because he's cooperating with ISIS all the time.
Karim, if Hamas is ISIS, right? This is what they say. Now, Israeli government is arming an ISIS-linked organization in Gaza. So if Hamas is ISIS, then the other ones are also ISIS, or maybe Hamas was not ISIS, or what is happening here, right? They're giving weapons to literally Hamas group, an ISIS group in Gaza to fight against Hamas, and then accusing Hamas of being ISIS. This is ridiculous.
It's the same thing that they did with Hamas in the 80s and 90s, supported Hamas against the PLO because they found the PLO to be a more threatening organization. And now they're funding this ISIS franchise. But I wanted to ask, I know we're getting towards the end of the hour, but I'm really curious. I don't follow public opinion in any of the Gulf countries, the state media, the commercial media, the social media. I'm wondering, to the extent that you do, what are the cleavages there? Do you have anything like a critical mass of people who are so fed up with their government's, I was going to say inaction, I should say collaboration with the U.S. and Israel, that it's becoming a force of pressure, a potent force of pressure that might actually influence their government's policies? Or do these Gulf states have such comprehensive control over the media over the dominant narratives is this, scapegoating and demonization of Shia and other Islamic minority sects. Is that so effective that any erstwhile opposition to their government's collaboration with the U.S. is dead on arrival, or do you see a kind of shift in a direction that might actually push these governments to take, to follow international law when it comes to the Genocide Convention, for instance?
Actually, these Gulf countries have never seen any hostilities, let's say, from the American or the Israeli side because of the Palestine cause. So they haven't engaged in any, let's say, offensive or defensive wars in the region to have any negative sentiments towards the Americans or to the Israelis. Like, those who paid the biggest price are the Palestinians, the Lebanese, Syrians, Egyptians, Jordanians to some point. That's why you have a big pro-Palestine people, like big segment of the Jordanian people are on the side of Palestine. They know that there is a direct threat against them, despite the kingdom's posture on the side of the United States. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, you don't see the people there basically acting positively towards the Palestinians or want to support the Palestinians. When you see the social media posts of their influencers, it's quite clear that these people have detached themselves completely from any geopolitical conflict or any land rights or claims of rights over Palestine. I speak to Emiratis and they don't care. They don't care. They don't care about Palestine. What they care about is their businesses, their banks, their money, their luxury, their cars. That's why
I was just gonna say, sorry for interrupting. I was just gonna say capitalism has done its good job there. That's the perfect capitalist mindset. Just think about consumption and screw the world.
And this is something not exclusive to the people, let's say the Emiratis, let's say, but also other people like Syrians. So what happened is after 2018, Emirate has opened its visas to Syrians, and they have taken many Syrians. We don't know exact numbers. Many Syrians, educated Syrians, well competent Syrians, etc., and they have given them jobs. But those are the same people I used to read for them when they were in Syria, and they were very much in connection with what is happening in the region. But once you move to the Emirates and you get a really good salary and your entire worldview starts evolving around what is dominant in this country and in this society, which is hyper obsession about materialistic things. And I'm not against having material things. Everybody wants to have a car, wants to have a home or a garden or something. But this obsession about materialistic pleasure, changing your watch every few weeks or every few months and changing your smartphone, this is the cycle that they have created for everyone who lives in these countries, right? And then you see my friends moving to the Emirates and started posting photos on Instagram with their new watch, doing something like this so that the people see what they're wearing on their armrest, Those are not minor things. It's just a way to make you more interested about you as a person and what you could own in that country and how much money you could make, because your friend is making more than you. If he's making $15,000, you're making $10,000 per month in the UAE. That should be enough incentive for you to even do more, to gain more money. So it becomes all about money and materialistic pleasures when you go to the Emirates, and you forget about more spiritual things or what is moral and what should be your stance. And this is really, in my opinion, like it's a killer for issues like Palestine. If enough people start thinking like this in the region, and I think now the Syrians are moving to the same direction because of the new regime there, and the regime is promising them investments. Of course, international corporations are going to come and invest. People will get their jobs, nice jobs, $1,000 per month, but they will own nothing basically, and things will be very expensive. It's not their company, it's not their country, it's not their economy, and it's not their sovereignty any longer. So there is this trend of wiping out sovereign countries in the region and abroad. Nobody is immune of this. Nobody. There is this idea of post-sovereign countries, and they want to create this. It's not like a one government rule, but the US would have an enormous impact on the political discourse in every country around the world through data, through social media, through AI, and that's where technologies like Palantir come into effect. They weaponize these AI systems into the American military. There's so many cases they don't even need to go to war any longer. They can sabotage your economy. They can sabotage your energy resources only through the technological means. So there is this big argument that in the United States, we don't have to spend all this money to send food soldiers into a hotspot. We can destabilize the regions without this type of direct intervention. And then we will have geopolitical idiots ruled by people like Jolani, moving them on the chessboard against our enemies. This is the new type of warfare the US is going to copy all around the world. No direct intervention. They could bomb with their fighter jets, but they will always have proxies on the ground. And then with the technological superiority, they would destabilize your infrastructure, basically, in order for you to capitulate. This is what we're going to witness. If Iran loses this war, just for an argument's sake, this is going to be, next we're going to be Pakistan, China, even Egypt, which thinks they are above this target. They're not. Egyptians are still a target. Egypt has a very strong military, and the Israelis are eyeing on the Sinai, a place where the Egyptians would never give up to the Israelis unless there is a regime change or there is a chaos or civil war in Egypt. So they're planning for sure something in Egypt and Pakistan and China. Those are the three countries which I believe after Iran, the US empire would be eyeing on. And what they did with Egypt is basically they have already killed the economy, so many loans from the IMF and the World Bank. Their economy is completely tarnished. The birth rates are exploding in Egypt, and they're not able to curb this. They're not able to reverse this. And sooner or later, it will be an hyperinflation in the country, and this will break the backbone of the Egyptian economy and the Egyptian military, basically, because the deep state in Egypt is the military. Unlike in Syria, there is a deep state in Egypt. So they will be targeted sooner or later because at least, I'm saying, they are still able to preserve their territorial integrity. And that's something that they don't like. They are eyeing on the Sinai, and they want the Sinai. They want to create the Greater Israel Project. This is what the theorists in Israel say. It's not even my words. They want to do that. So Egypt is definitely a target. And Pakistan, I'm not an expert on Pakistan, and I don't know much of its internal politics. That's why I didn't even comment about the war between Pakistan and India. I don't know about it. But it seems to me, at least, that an Islamic country having a nuclear weapons is going to be an obstacle for them, just on the surface, you know?
And he has said that also. He has said that, Netanyahu. He has said that Pakistan. He wants Pakistan to. That's one of the targets to Netanyahu. So just to wrap up what you just said, Kevork, this just means very. It's a very cold fact apparently, but this just means there exists no resistance to the Gulf kingdoms at the moment. I mean, in the 60s and 70s was a very different time when you think about resistance also to Arab leaders and stuff. But currently, like there's just no resistance to these people. They're just sitting there cozy and safe and just doing imperialism and messing up the region. And there's no active resistance against these guys.
But right? Just one last word, Karim, about this. I think what the Saudis and the Emiratis are doing is all over the table. Like, you know what they're doing. And they are not hiding it from the public. They are normalizing relations with Israel on the table. They are allies with the United States on the table. They're not pretending to be resistance in the region. Unlike Qatar. Qatar pretends to be a resistance against the Israelis. They pretend to be supporting the resistance in the region. But that's not the case. What Qatar has done in the region goes beyond what the Saudis and the Emiratis have done in the region, and all tacitly. They have bought an entire generation of left-wing anti-imperialist young academics, young journalists, young intellectuals, basically, and they have groomed them to become all anchors, social media influencers, poets, big talking heads everywhere on TV outlets. and they are recycling two narratives together. One, we are on the side of the Palestinian right for self-determination. We are on the side of Palestine, the resistance, this and that, and they salute Hezbollah, they salute Hamas. But what they do also in parallel, they destroy every source of tangible support for the Palestinians. For example, Iran, they go against Iran. They raise all the sectarian talking points during the discourse. They fight against Syria. They fight against Hezbollah, right? Those are all the things they do to give Palestine on a golden plate to the Israelis. And this is more, in my opinion, insidious. It is more like the way is sneaky, you know, like they have bought an entire generation of people in my age. Like you write an article, you get just an example, Karim. I was invited on Al Jazeera. They want me to be on a debate, 40 minutes, right? And they want to invite me to Ankara for this. Just an example for you, for your respected audience to know the gravity of the issue. They want to invite me there, full paid, 3 nights in a hotel with a plane, aller tour from Germany to Istanbul. And then when I'm in Istanbul, they will give me $2,000 cash in an envelope. And I said, no, I don't want to go to Al Jazeera and debate anyone. Jazeera for me is like a no-go zone, and especially in Istanbul. Like, what's the safety measures there to go to Istanbul and debate someone and not get killed in Istanbul? I don't think that's a wise thing to do. So I said, no, I don't want to go to Al Jazeera. So they said, yeah, but if the issue is about money, we give you $4,000 for the 40 minutes. How many people, in your opinion, would say no to such a debate, even if he is on the side of the resistance, even if he's on the side of Hezbollah? Do you think many people would say no for $4,000? Sorry, many people will accept that. But for me, Al Jazeera is a psyop, is a distraction outlet against the people of the region, including myself, including my family, including my country, including my brother being kidnapped by a Qatari-funded outlet, including the destruction of our properties in Aleppo. No, I'm not going to forgive them for what they did to Syria, to Palestine, to Lebanon, etc. And accordingly, we need to boycott this. But many people are, as we mentioned, money plays a huge role. You know, if you're a journalist and you publish for Al Jazeera, you know, this was 15 years ago, sorry. One article on Al Jazeera, they used to pay $400. Now, because I wanted to publish in Al Jazeera 15 years ago, they asked me to write an article in Al Jazeera, and when I wrote it, they didn't publish it in Al Jazeera website. But they offered me back then, as I was a junior, new journalist, basically 22, 23 years old, $400 per an article. Now, if I'm more experienced and able to write better articles, more in-depth analysis about anything, I'm sure now the prices are way higher. For anyone to sit in Lebanon and write 1 article per week, you can make a great living. So this is how they corrupted the intellectual class in the Arab world, basically, by corrupting things through money. There is the famous Vietnamese, if I'm not mistaken, Vietnamese revolutionary leader, Ho Chi Minh No. I think he says, if you want to corrupt a revolution, dump money in this revolution, like corrupt them with money. And this is what they did, basically. They created this false impression that there is revolutions happening in the Arab world, Arab Spring, etc. But they have bribed all the intellectuals in these countries to be on the side of the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, everybody knows that they have been a 5th column in the region for a very long time. So this is what Qatar is about, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you were invited on to Al Jazeera Arabic or English?
Al Jazeera Arabic as a debater, and the article was on Al Jazeera English back then.
Okay, yeah, I've heard, you know, Al Jazeera English in the U.S. is like one of the least offensive television channels for news, but I was shocked to learn that the Al Jazeera Arabic is just full of Sunni sectarianism, which is, you know, quite the opposite image that they portray for the English language international version.
There is a meme about this, by the way. The meme,
Oh, really?
when it comes to Al Jazeera English, first of all, it comes to the Jazeera Arabic. It's like, kill all the infidels, let's kill the Shias, you know. And then when it comes to Al Jazeera English, every country deserves democracy except Qatar. And then when it comes to Al Jazeera Plus, it's like LGBT community, you know, we like multiculturalism and diversity. It's so heinous what they do, you know, it's so insidious what they do. Same outlet, 3 different platforms. Each one of them is directing their speech to certain class, you know, certain targeted audience. This is a psychological operation.
Final question, Kevork. I know we're already at 1 hour and 20 minutes story, but one final question, then no more questions. What do you think Iran should do next? That's it. I want to hear from you. Okay, you're often very good in the predictions. So I want to know from you, what do you think from now? We have that so-called ceasefire. What should Iran do next?
Iran should immunize its domestic frontline. You have thousands of Mossad operatives everywhere in the country, launching attacks from inside the country. Unless you really organize your domestic home, it's not the wisest thing to go into wider war against an enemy. And it's quite clear that on the intelligence level, the Israelis have a superiority. Otherwise, they wouldn't find them in their sleeping room with drones. And they have, I mean, we have to give credit for the Israeli intelligence. They are really working day and night to harm Iran. And the Iranians didn't show that they have enough information and data to assassinate leaders. Maybe they don't want to. I don't know. But on the surface, it doesn't look like Iran has the same intelligence that the Israelis have in this case. So intelligence, secrecy, communication. The telecommunication is the most important thing in any country at war against an enemy. So if everything is exposed, like Mossad operatives calling senior generals in the Iranian army and recording the conversation, it's too much. It's too much that you're killing like a chief of staff and defense minister, and you're able to talk to their successor. You know, so that would be my advice. Immunize yourself first. They need what Iranians are very proud people, Karim, and very much too much pride is also, in my opinion, is not helpful. For example, when they were negotiating the strategic partnership with Russia. Right, and we criticize Russia also for its, let's say, inaction and sometimes also collaboration with the United States in the region. However, the Russians, they offered the Iranians to be an article as a defense pact between the Russians and the Iranians rejected that because Iran wants to preserve its complete control and sovereignty over its military affairs. I personally understand that, but the world is moving too fast for Iran to catch these technological advances. Therefore, opening up to technological markets with China, with, I don't know if there are other countries, to receive this, to blind the Israelis from seeing what's happening in the country is not the wrong thing to do. It's not wrong. You need assistance in this. You cannot be so proud that you don't ask this type of assistance from potential allies, especially if you, Iran, say that we are part of the BRICS and we want to be part of the Shanghai cooperation, right? That means that you accepted to be part of the Eurasian economic integration process. And if you want to do that, you are not going to do it by yourself. You're going to integrate your economy with a broader network of economies in the region, one of which is Russia and China. Otherwise, leave the BRICS. If you want to be a sovereign 100% country that you don't want to give up anything, even to allied countries, then do that. But if you are sending signals that you want this integration with the region and abroad, you have to receive aid from these countries, and especially telecommunication, spying, data, like locating the targets inside Israel. Those all help. Iran. Unless they immunize their domestic, let's say, frontline, they will be exposed to the Israelis. And that's very dangerous, because I have zero doubts that Netanyahu wants to assassinate Khamenei, and they want to cause this so-called color revolution in the country. Now I believe they will start moving their people in the country to protest against the Iranian government, to create the scene that the people want to be liberated from it. It will not work. It will not work. They will come back later with another military strike. It's just a matter of time.
And what about the bomb?
I don't know if they should build a bomb. To be honest with you, I don't know. But this war has shown to the entire world, if you don't have this bomb, you will come under an attack and you're exposed. But the time of the 60s and the 70s are gone. Back then, I don't know how North Korea managed to acquire a nuke. I don't know how Pakistan acquired the nuke. But back then, it seems that it was more manageable or more accessible than now. If Iran does its first nuclear test, everybody will know that they have done a test. So what is going to be the reaction? Saudi Arabia will get a nuclear bomb. For sure, 100%. The entire region would be nuclearized. Do you really trust MBS with nuclear weapons? And do you trust Netanyahu not to strike Iran?
I don't trust Netanyahu with that stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Even Netanyahu, do you trust that Netanyahu will show self-restraint? No, I don't think so. I think Netanyahu will bomb Iran with nukes if the Iranians do a test. So it's a really difficult decision, you know. But it seems in Iran there is a big debate about it. Will Khamenei change his position or not? I think he will not change his position. He's already 82 years old, probably has a few years to live. And then maybe the successor would be more hardliner. I don't know. That would be that could be the change after him. But right now, it's a really, double-edged sword. Like from every side you look at it, it could really stab you. It's not easy for Iran. Like talking about nukes is something, and then building a nuke is something else. You will need a lots of delivery system, the technology to fire it. And during the tests, it's going to be horrendous. Everybody will know when there is a nuclear test happening. And unlike Israel, which gives you the impression that the Israelis didn't build a bomb. They have acquired the bomb. They have taken a bomb from someone, and not that they built it, because they didn't test these nukes at all. Or it's just a bluff. What do you think about it? Maybe it's just a bluff. They don't have nukes.
I wish. I wish.
Yeah, I don't have much patience for religion, but I actually found the Ayatollah's fatwa's reasoning persuasive. That these are just weapons that are fundamentally too evil, and I wish that were actually the dominant view around the world. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't think anything a U.S. empire, I don't think there's anything they feel that is too evil. I mean, we've seen them support a full-blown genocide where every depravity can be committed, and just don't, and never stopping it, just keep continuing it. I really don't think there's any limit to what these people can inflict on other human beings. It's psychopathy 101. It's really, really crazy. Anyway, you've been very generous again, Kevork, with your time. There's still, I could ask still much more, but maybe someday in the near future we can do another round with you and Tariq. That would be great.
Inshallah.
And now we're gonna leave it here for now. All fantastic information, brother, and we will talk soon again. Thank you.
Thank you so
good
much.
talking with you.
And thank you so much.